Good. And we are now live. And very, very warm welcome to my guest today, who is the wonderful Joanna Fortune.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for coming. I've got so many questions for you, and I'm very excited. My name is Kim Nash, and I'm head of publicity at Bookershaw and Thread, for those of you who don't know me. And I will get Joanna, if you would, Joanna, just to introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Joanna Fortune. I'm a psychotherapist and I am an author in the Thread family, which I'm delighted to be in. I'm the author of 2 books, 15-Minute Parenting 0 to 7 years, that blue cover, and 8 to 12 years, the green cover. So yeah, I really focus and work on the parent-child relationship. That's been the thrust of my clinical work since, oh my gosh, all along, but particularly since I set up my own clinic in 2010. And before that, I worked for a long time in the NGO charity sector here. So on a lot of social issues, a lot of trauma, a lot of attachment repair. But then when I started my own practice, I really wanted to invest in the parent-child relationship because I think it's the greatest catalyst for change that we have in our children. I think, by working with the relationship rather than just the individual child, we can see meaningful and sustainable change happen a lot quicker.
Fantastic. Well, I've got lots of questions for you today. And if anybody is going to join us today, pop a comment in the comments box at the side. If you've got a question for Joanna, then please pop a question in and we'll get to as many questions as we can. But I'm going to start with probably quite a topical question at the moment. And one that certainly affected us in our family. Obviously, we're living in very strange times. We're living in, there's obviously a global pandemic going on. And a lot of children are suffering and feeling more anxious than normal. I know my son certainly is having quite a lot of dreams and he's waking up and feeling a little shaky. And I just wondered if you could maybe give us some advice on how to cope with that at these times.
Yeah, and I think that is something I'm hearing so much more about. And I see it, I have a very young child myself, and you might think, well, a toddler, at least it's going over their heads, they're not getting it. And I actually don't think that's true at all. Like I see it in her that she's carrying that awareness that this is strange and it's been strange for quite a while. I think initially, Kim, when our children were getting much more of us at home, there was a bit of a novelty to it, a little bit of oh, look at this, you're around all the time. And then they had to reconcile with, oh, actually you're around, but I'm supposed to pretend like you're not because you're in work mode now. And that's very difficult for me to hold those two conflicting things in mind. And, oh, this isn't just a holiday. It's going on quite a long time. And I don't see my teacher anymore or my childminder or my friends, or I'm not seeing my grandparents or, my family support network, the network that gets all of us through this whole parenting journey. And so actually, I think it's quite normal that our children are beginning to show those overt signs. And at least if they're showing them, it's their way of saying, hey, this isn't sitting okay with me. My unconscious mind is trying to work that through in my sleep. We're seeing increasing sleep disruption. Some behavioral regression. You might even see that your maybe 10-year-old child is suddenly tantruming again or behaving like in a way you haven't seen since they were 5 or 6. And that's simply letting you know, I feel really dysregulated. I feel out of sync with myself emotionally. And how I can tell you that, because children don't have the emotional vocabulary, generally speaking, to say, hey, I'm overwhelmed and perturbed by this ongoing situation that's causing me stress and anxiety. Instead, they do it with their behavior. So they act it out. They show us things aren't good. The problem that comes up then is that we can often, because our own systems are quite heightened and activated at the moment as well, to be fair to ourselves, we can tend to respond and react just to the overt behavior instead of trying to get curious about what's the emotional state underpinning this behavior. How can I understand why it is you're pushing these buttons, or you're acting out, or you're being grouchy and difficult, and what can I do about it? So the practical approach to it that I would recommend, no matter how old your child is that when anxiety is to the fore, go back to very early play, go back to stage 1, sensory, touch-based, tactile, messy play. And the reason that works is it's a really tangible way to actually externalize that icky, uncomfortable chaos and mess that's so hard for me to speak of inside. At least if I can externalize that in the play, like I'm talking about squirt shaving foam onto a breakfast tray, maybe put in a couple of drops of food dye, swish it up, using sensory basins, get a basin of water, squirt of washing up liquid, don't swish it around, just squirt it in, add in a teaspoon of cinnamon or ginger or curry, something really strong smelling. You could put in some glitter, but we all know glitter lives for 26 years as soon as you open it once. So, I mean, I know I say glitter and I know parents go, not the glitter. So don't feel like you have to do that. You could also get some nice colored shiny paper and just cut it into little bits and sprinkle it in. And it has that visual stimulus effect without the mess of the glitter. Then give them a handheld whisk or even just their fingers and let them swish the bowl of water. The water should be tepid, so not hot, not cold. Then they get the sense of the water, they get the bubbles, they get the smell of that cinnamon or curry, they get, if there's a visual stimulus in there, you can scoop bubbles onto your hand and scrape it from your hand to their hand and pass the bubbles backwards and forwards. You can have them just, wash their toys. You could do a hand stack in the bowl of water, and you're getting a lot of sensory tactile stimulus. Now, if me saying that, because I know the messy play isn't every parent's go-to, so I do think we have to find a way of getting the mess there, because it's about, in a doing way, saying, I can handle your mess. You can put that out there and I'll actually structure and contain that for you, and I'll make sure it doesn't get out of control. We're actually reassuring them that we can handle the emotional mess and the chaos as well. But if you're going, no, in my house, absolutely not, then instead take a baking bowl and fill it with uncooked red and green lentils, uncooked, the raw lima beans. But just if you've got very small kids in the house, be aware they can be a choking hazard. And the bow tie shaped pasta that looks like butterflies, and fill the baking bowl with that. And then you can, depending on your child now, if they're monetary motivated, hide a coin in there and they'll dig and find it. Or, if you want to add in a new piece of Lego, put that in there and they'll dig. But in the digging with their hands, they're getting that sensory embodiment, tactile piece. And it's so regulating. But equally, you could make Play-Doh. And I like to add in some scent, either fresh thyme and slices of lemon. And you leave that, in a little tub overnight. That'll be a beautiful scented Play-Doh. You can make with cocoa powder. You could have like a chocolate Play-Doh, or just add in a couple of drops of lavender oil, orange oil, lemon oil, and you're increasing the sensory stimulus of the Play-Doh by baking it. It doesn't matter if you're little ones, if they eat it, it won't matter. And also you get the kind of process of beginning, middle, end. Anything like that is a great way to take our children out of their heads and down into the now moment of their bodies. And that is a really effective way to lower anxiety levels, lower worries. And those little uh-oh feelings that our kids might hold in themselves. It's not full-blown anxiety, but it's not quite right. It's that breadcrumb trail that we're trying to get to. And the most fun, fast and free way of releasing residual tension in the body before bedtime, because if they carry it into bedtime, you will get disrupted sleep, is to have a good old belly laugh. Not tickles, nothing wrong with tickles between parents and children, but that's a stimulus reaction. A good old authentic belly laugh will release tension that they're holding in their body and allow them to actually have that restful sleep. So there's lots of ways of playing this out. If they're a little bit older and we're thinking more that the worry, we're thinking about the times we're in, and some of that is drawn, I find, Kim, from news. They're hearing a lot of news, they're seeing a lot of news. And you know what? There's an awful lot of other stuff going on in the news at the moment that is very triggering and worrisome for us grown-ups. So it's the same for our children. If they're catching snippets of it, and then, as adults, we sometimes think, oh gosh, that's not appropriate, I better turn that off. But they've heard a snippet and now they don't know what to do with that. What was the story? How does that work out? Children use narrative in stage 2 play to make sense of things. So actually, if they have heard a snippet, we do need to knit that into a narrative for them. We do need to talk through in stories. But I find a nice way is to actually play out the news. You could be they could be the interviewer, and you're the expert, on the news. So they're going to ask you questions and you're going to give appropriate answers. But by doing it in the guise of play, they're better able to assimilate and integrate the meaning than if we're just talking at them. Because worry tends to flip our little lids, our brain lids. They get a bit flipped. And if our lids are flipped, that clever thinking, rational, reflecting part of our brain is offline. And what we're relying on is that emotional feeling amygdala piece that's saying, worry, worry, worry. You should worry and worry a little bit more. And I mean, we all love to be right about things. So if I'm cued for worry, I look for signs that I should worry. I'm looking for evidence that I'm right to feel the way that I do. So by playing it out in that role play way, actually I'm processing in a doing, not saying way. All of those are great ways to deal with what's going on at the moment.
Fantastic. I love that. Absolutely love it. Claire's popped on, and Claire says that's such a great tip. Jenny, who is our managing director, has said, hi, Joanna, I definitely struggle with embracing mess, so this is very helpful advice. I know when Ollie was a child, was a baby, from 6 months old, he used to go to a childminder, and she was the most messiest childminder in the world. He used to come home absolutely filthy. So I feel like I kind of didn't have to deal with all the mess.
I love that. But you do, Kim. You do. You have to say, you can bring that to me too. I actually also, I had a childminder for a while with my little one, and I always said that my house looked burgled at the end of their day together. And it was like, talk about an externalization of the fun. I was like, that's great. It's literally all over the walls. It's everywhere. It's fantastic, isn't it? But it is so important. But, you know, the containing of the mess is so important. I'm just thinking of what Jenny said there. And do you know a really good way that's just popped into my head as well that you could do is, you know, those art rolls of paper that everyone gets, you know, you can get them in IKEA and you can get them in every places, but I actually use wallpaper lining because it's cheap and you can get it in the hardware store and it's really thick. And what I do is I wrap the table. So it could be like a little coffee table or the play table or your kitchen table is totally fine. Wrap it completely, sellotape it underneath, and you can either draw shapes or rough picture frame outlines and then get paper plates and put your paint and stuff on that and let the whole thing just happen on the table, at the end of which you just unwrap it, roll it, and it's done. And so you can do the messy play in a contained way. The importance is that we let it in.
I think there's going to be lots of comments in our internal system this afternoon saying that Joanna is our new favourite person.
And when it's all going wrong, guys, you know, it's cotton wool and it's whatever you have around your house. You should never feel like with play with your child that you have to first go out and buy a box of tricks or buy a kit. Actually, you can play with everything that's just lying around the house and you can just play with yourself. You're the toy, you're the prop.
Amazing. Claire says, I'd love to ask Joanna about how to set boundaries between being in parent mode and teacher mode. And we're now so many weeks into lockdown and I definitely feel like my kids are pushing the boundaries.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, God, that's such a good question. I think everybody's going there. And that kind of, it's not even a duality of roles anymore. I think there's a multiplicity of roles on parents. We're trying to be parent, professional, teacher, playmate, all at once and have our happy face on all the time doing it. That's incredibly stressful. So we have to be a little kinder to ourselves as well. Now, it depends on the age of your kids. So one of the ways I find really useful with young kids is to use something really overt. So I might wear, you know, a hoodie, like a little cardigan or something, a hoodie, a sweatshirt that's blue. And when I'm in my blue sweatshirt, that means I'm in work mode. And it's a visual cue that your children can look at you and say, oh, that's the work outfit. Now she's working. And then take it off and you're available and you're playful and you're there and you can do it that way. Something that's very visual and symbolic. I think as well that, you know, with children who are trying to do the schoolwork piece, I'm just looking, I'm going to stretch off camera to grab something. And I'm sure you have something like this at home or you can adapt something to be like this. So I have this timer. Of course, it's 15 minutes, it would be. And what I would say with the schoolwork piece, Claire, and boundaries is say to your kids, okay, we have to sit at the table and do our English or our maths work until all the sand hits the bottom. Okay. It's a visual piece. I can see the time going as it's happening with me, not to me. It's different to a bing of a phone or the bing of an oven clock that's saying, oh, look, now your time's up. That's kind of happening to me. I get to see it. I've got to work until all the sand is done. Then you turn it again and you say, now we get to play and have fun for a whole other turn until the sand hits the bottom. Now we're going to sit down again and do another turn. The way this works is it's visual, so it's very regulating. You know, I know, okay, it's only that time, but then I get to play for that amount of time. you're getting them to do the schoolwork in very focused, structured, short, sharp bursts. And I would say to you, be good to yourself. You are not your kid's teacher. We are trying to support their learning during these difficult times, and our teachers are experts at this and will absolutely get our kids back on track. What they need us to do, I believe, is emotionally strengthen our kids up so that when they go back to school, they are emotionally co-regulated enough to avail of what the teachers can make available, to be in a place that they can integrate learning. Because when our kids are heightened, when any of us, to be honest, but children in particular, when we're heightened and worked up and stressed and anxious, we go into this heightened state of arousal, like anticipatory arousal, or I'd call it little meerkat mode, where I'm just darting around going, I'm worried, I'm worried, I'm worried. It's actually very difficult, near impossible, to take in and process new cognitive information in that state of mind. So the best things that we can do for our kids is actually help them to relax and de-stress and calm. That's going to make the learning possible. But I also think this time is a unique opportunity for all of us as a society, a global society, to embrace that learning is broader than classic classroom, school-based learning. If your children are playing, they are learning. That is how they learn. It's how they understand other people and the world outside of them. It's how they build a sense of self. It's how they explore their world. It's how they get out of their own little heads and they take things that aren't quite processed or making sense and they put it into the play to make sense of it. They can be learning by you teaching them some life skills, learning how to scramble an egg for myself or make beans on toast. Look at that. Now I can feed myself. Learning where the laundry actually lives in our house. Learning how to work the washing machine or load or unload the dishwasher. These are practical life skills, and learning should be a holistic thing. So I do think that this time that we're in offers a unique opportunity for us and our children to expand their learning beyond classroom-based learning.
Absolutely fascinating. Going on to one of those points, I have probably been a bit of a helicopter mom all my life. I think I was 39 when I had Ollie, so I was kind of an older mom, and he was the son I never thought I would have. So I suppose I have completely mollycoddled him all his life.
Yeah.
And I do feel very much that sometimes I do things for him when he should be doing them himself, but it's just difficult for me to do them myself. He's now 12. So
okay.
We talked about making people, trying to encourage them to be independent. I would still now struggle to get Ollie to make me a cup of coffee. Yeah, I know. Washing machine, he wouldn't even know where the washing machine is. And I have honestly mollycoddled him so much that he does nothing in the house. So how do I turn that around now?
It's harder to do it now. So you've made a job for yourself, but everything is possible. I'm just laughing. My toddler is a coffee fiend. She loves the theater of it. She loves, the whole performance of coffee, and she learned how to work the Nespresso machine. We get coffees in this house, whether you want them or not. So I think actually teaching our kids little life skills is really important. And the reason being, not that we can have them doing our washing and coffee. That's just a secondary gain. The primary motivation of all of that is that they begin to stretch themselves a little, not a lot, but a little outside of their developmental comfort zone. They begin to see that, wow, look at all I can do. I can do things for myself, or I can certainly give it a go. And we're building self-efficacy, because what's coming for you and your son now is adolescence, when developmentally he has to pull away from you. I often think of it as a sort of necessary, really uncomfortable breakup, because in early childhood, our kids are totally in love with us. They idealize us. We're great. We could do everything. And there's nothing that mom or dad doesn't have the answer to. In middle childhood, they begin to doubt us a bit. They're testing us, going, are you sure? Maybe I'll ask someone else. They might know more than you. They begin to give you that quizzical, you're not convincing me so much. And in adolescence, they are full-blown disappointed in us. We underwhelm them constantly. And that's all part of an unpleasant but necessary process that they can find their way back to us. I always think, that of that line, the art of parenting is to raise independent adults. So actually you have to start. No, but I think it's, it's also what that allowed you. There is a joy for us as well in being able to be the one who can meet our children's needs, who
Yeah.
can make it feel better, who can be the answer to those problems. I like, of course, there's a joy to that. There's nothing lovelier than that cuddle piece of, I can make you feel better and soothe you. That's so gratifying and reassuring as a parent, because that's what we all want to do. But I also think in adolescence, because of the risk taking. So if you think of brain development, coming up now is that real massive surge in brain development of adolescence, where the bit of the brain that develops really quickly is the bit saying, do it, do it, do it, do it, do it, do it. And the bit of the brain that develops really slowly until mid-20s for most of us, for some people maybe their whole lives, but for mid-20s is that bit of the brain that says, are you sure that's such a good idea? Do you want to maybe think that through? So teenagers are neurologically wired to do crazy things, to be impulsive, to be risky, to take chances, to make us as parents go, what were you thinking? And actually, as soon as you say that, they weren't thinking. They were in do it mode, pleasure seeking, reward drive mode. And when in that mode, we have to be sure that we've given them the skills to be able to do stuff, to be in charge, to be competent, to be capable. So I would say at his age, what you need to start doing, if you do pocket money, reframe it. If not, pocket money is a great way to start independence. And just be clear that they're your rules. It doesn't matter what his friends are getting or what he tells you his friends are getting. You set an amount of money and a set of expectations. What do you expect him to do with that? And there's a time period where he's going to spend it all really quickly and then come to you saying, I need more. And you're saying, actually, no, you've got to sit with that now for the rest of the week. And then next week, you get to make more choices. I think you want to start giving choices again, but choices within your parental structure, because I think as parents, over the course of, parenting goes through a kind of journey in trends and media hypes and all of that. This whole empower your kids by giving them choices, we lost the run of ourselves a bit, because no child, no matter how old they are, should ever have a choice that affects the whole family. It should never be, where do you want to go? It should be, we're going to the park. Do you want to bring your scooter or your bike? There's your choice, So you do get choices, but I'm reassuring you that as the parent in charge, I'm going to take care of the big stuff. I'm going to do that piece, and you get to make choices within my framework. So I think you could definitely do that. Chores are a fantastic way for children to actually feel, and not chores that you get paid for, because actually part of being in a family is that everybody should contribute and help out, and you don't get rewarded for that. That's just the way it is. And then if there's an over and above thing I do, that might be something that I can get rewarded specifically or work towards something with. So chores, practicing independence, like, for example, if there was a corner shop down the road that didn't involve, now don't start with crossing the motorway style stuff, but that was, in your heart of hearts, is a safe journey to make, that you let him go and do that. And you give him a little shopping list and you give him the money, and he has to be responsible for engaging with the shop assistant, getting the things on the list, handing over money, making change, and bringing all of that back to you. That's really good to start independence as well. But I would start doing it soon. Definitely.
I really need to do it soon. And I think it's a shame, really, because this year Oliver's gone to high school, so we did start to get that independence. He was walking together. He was going, he'd stop in a shop on the way home and buy himself something if he got some money, and it was kind of his responsibility to work out how much money he'd got and what he needed for whatever he wanted. And then it's kind of because of what's happened and the fact he's now not been going to school. It kind of feels like it's come to a bit of a standstill. So, they would perhaps be some really good things once we can start to go back out into shops again.
And you know what you're going to do then as well, Kim, is dip into the challenge-based play section of the book you just held up there. The blue one has and actually it's in the green one as well, but the blue one details challenge play, because challenge play is a great way of building self-esteem and self-efficacy and conveying that message in that doing, not saying way of, wow, look at all I'm capable of, look at all I can do. So go to challenge.
Fantastic. Going back to that high school transition as well, are there any sort of tips that you could give for people? I know they're going to be coming up to this year's obviously a very strange one again, because some people, we don't really know what high school is going to entail this year. But I know I have some friends that have got kids in year 6 and they're going up to high school this year. Is there anything you can kind of recommend to get people ready for high school?
Especially in these times. And I think, that transitions are always a hotbed of tension, aren't they? Any transition, even the positive ones, because they represent change and they represent a step into the unknown. And I can't always anticipate with certainty, what's that going to look and feel like? What's it going to sound like? What's it even going to smell like? So sensory wise, which is how I get regulated, I'm actually quite, dysregulated in, because I'm in a state of suspended confusion and lacking clarity. So actually, typically what would happen with a lot of schools anyway is that you would have kind of a little tour, or you could go visit the school, or there would be communication. And the last term of, your first stage education is actually building you up towards that. You can do it. Come on, we're thinking and talking about it together. And actually, this group of kids have missed that by virtue of being at home. So they've had a premature loss of their young school days. They've lost those teachers that they had built a rapport with, and who would have been a key part of preparing them for this transition. And now we're saying, so you just got to do it, kids. You just got to take a step in here. And actually, I think we have to try as best we can to be, physically, but also emotionally available to them now in this transition, even more so. And that doesn't mean, going back to your helicopter parenting, that doesn't mean, holding their hand on that first day of school, or physically walking them into the classroom and sitting there beside them. But it is about believing with them and believing in them. I know that you can do this. Let's break it down into steps. One of the things that I think is useful is if the new school has a good website, and a lot of them do now, to take a little look around it together, sit and look at the pictures that are up there, the physical size of it, oh, look, they have a lab, look at how they do science, this is where you will learn languages. If the school they're going to, for the incoming new students, can send a little video, could do a tour around the school, I think just being able to close my eyes and see where I'm going to be, that's very reassuring. And I'm thinking now of the kids going to high school. If the school in question, if they don't already, they could certainly develop a practice of mentorship, so that an older child in the school, not an exam year student, but someone somewhere in the middle who's been in the school a few years, could be assigned to a new student as a way of saying, look, I've been here, I can tell you the lay of the land, I can walk you around, I can show you how things go, or actually you're better off going to your lockers to get your books at this time because it's really busy at break time. So if you do this, that's going to save you time, and can give them the little tricks that they've learned over the years that make school more manageable. I think mentorship is a great practical thing. And I think, that's for the kids going into high school, but also the children going from preschool into big school. Any transition like that is really, because you're going from being the big kid where you are to the small kid where you're going. And that's a real shift in power balance. And there's nothing more dysregulating than a shift in power balance. And I'm all of a sudden really unfamiliar with what's expected of me, and I have to learn that again. So I think we need to be patient. We need to be really tolerant. For the first 6 to 8 weeks, I know in my clinical practice, I rarely take new referrals at the start of September because it's back to school time, and every child struggles. Every child is going to have some kind of behavioral wobbles, some regression. And I'm thinking, look, if it's still a problem by Halloween midterm, give me a shout. Because most kids, not all, but most kids will struggle and then settle as the adjustment becomes familiar. And then some other children have over and above needs within that, or over and above struggles. But I would reach out to the school. They're experts at this. They take in new students every single year, and they know what works. So talk to them about what's going to work and what plans they have in place. I know it's difficult at the moment because some of it's quite uncertain still. We're not 100% sure what is it going to look like, and nor are our schools. So I think if we work collaboratively with the schools and say to them, look, is there anything that I could be doing at home that would be helpful to you when my child is going back into you? I think that's a better approach than saying to them, come on, what are you doing about it?
I know I've got a friend who's a head teacher as well, and I've just written down to talk to her about that, because I think the mentorship thing, I think, is amazing, and they certainly haven't done that at our high school. I'm sure thought about it, but that's something I'm definitely going to pass on to Kate, and and suggest for her.
Yeah, and it's good for the older kids too, because they're then put in this position of, semi-authority, but also being empowered to go, yeah, I can help you. That's something really practical. So it's actually a two-way process. There are benefits for everybody involved in a mentorship system, and it just alleviates a bit of pressure from the school faculty as well.
I'm sure Jenny will find your comments really useful, because her eldest son is going up to high school this year as well. So
Yeah,
I'm sure that'll be very, very useful. Sarah asks, what advice do you have for fussy eaters?
Oh, Sarah, again, I'm going to draw on my own clinical practice and just share with you that one of the calls that come in, the two most difficult things as a therapist to address with children are anything to do with toileting and food. Because in a world that is so often out of their control, the things they can control are what goes in and out of the body. So they tend to, hold white-knuckled onto those symptoms of food and toileting. And actually, you have to get what's behind that. What is it about the food that is so fussy? Is it a sensory thing? Am I a little bit sensory sensitive? I don't like crunches or bits or, lumps or colors. Like, is it something like that? In which case, go back and increase loads of sensory play, lots of different, one of the things I would do is put some food dye onto dry white rice and, in different bowls, let them mix and pour, or pour it all over your floor in the kitchen, some kind of hard surface floor, and let them in their bare feet dance on it. And then you can sweep it up easily. But as a parent, you have to, as best you can, avoid putting an emotional charge around food. Because if they see that this is something that has a heightened emotional charge, it is somewhere they will also put a lot of their emotional projections and transference out. So if they're eating enough, but it's a very limited range of foods, but it's enough to fuel the energy they need for the day, go with that. The one thing I would say to you is do the teaspoon taste test, and everyone in the family has to do it. So every day at dinner time, there is a teaspoon that has something new on it, okay? And you don't put it, but touching off food, because a lot of kids are sensitive about that. Don't have it touch anything. Just put it beside their plate with no expectation. It's an invitation to try something new. Let them see you pick up the teaspoon, taste it, and okay, and move on. And you don't throw a parade if they try it, and you don't criticize if they don't. Have a little rule that everybody stays at the table for the duration of dinner time, because the longer they sit there, it's more likely, even absent-mindedly, they'll eat a little bit more. But I think you want to try and not use food as a reward or consequence. Don't ever incentivize behavior. If you eat your broccoli, you can have some chocolate. Don't do that, because we always incentivize with chocolate or something sweet. We don't incentivize behavior with cauliflower. So we actually are teaching them that there is a hierarchy for food. There's good food and there's bad food, and there's treat food and there's food you just have to endure and get through, when actually it should just be food. Try to involve them in food preparation. I think being part of the process is actually a really helpful thing. Instead of Play-Doh, I want you to do pastry sculptures. So get rid of the shapers, the cookie cutter things, get rid of all those. Give them an egg cup of flour. Never give a young child a bag of flour. You're just looking for trouble. An egg cup of flour is enough. And let them manipulate the pastry with their hands and make monsters or zombies or whatever they like with it. And however often it's been on the floor, stick it in the oven and everyone can have a nibble at the dinner table. It won't kill any of us. And they get that kind of sensory into nurture. Depending on the age of the child, if you, when you're doing the veggies and you're peeling them, put all your peelings into a bowl and give it to them to do peeling art. Let them play with the peelings. Let them, make hair, make eyes. Just let them manipulate that. Involving them in the tactile experience of food is a great way to normalize different textures and the tactile nature of food. But otherwise, I would say once they're eating enough, go with it. Invite and always make an opportunity to try something new, and model that. Do it yourself. Be aware if you've got other fussy eaters. If any of the adults in the house are a fussy eater, that's something that it spreads quickly. So if you have an adult fussy eater, make sure you talk to them about, suppressing some of that when they're around your child, and just encourage trying things that are new, not just food, but in general. Celebrate effort over outcome in everything that you're doing, because what you're reinforcing is all you have to do is try. You don't have to like it. You don't have to eat it every day, but all you have to do is try. And you can actually affect that by praising effort across all play. Trying a jigsaw, don't say, oh my gosh, you did it, amazing. Say, wow, I really love the way you took your time when I could see you were picking up each piece and just wiggling it till it fit. You're teaching me that how I do things is what's important, and that will affect all areas of my life.
Wow. I hope you're ready for me all afternoon, Joanna, because I could honestly do it all afternoon. I know a friend of mine years ago was when Ollie was little, she taught me how to do sign language. And that worked really, really well for us because it kind of let him get his frustration by signing. Is that something that you think is a good thing to learn for young babies?
Yeah, I mean, look, the evidence on that is like children will learn language and expressive verbal skills without doing that. But it is a nice way of being able to kind of get gotten and feel felt that you're understanding me. I think as parents, we have an innate way of doing that. I think reading our children is something that we do. I think we interpret their sounds. We play with them from infancy just by how we speak to them, using that prosody of our voice, that pitch, pace and tone, that musicality of voice. That's playful. Our children experience that as a song. They don't hear what we're saying. They hear us saying, we're going to the park. We're going to put on our coats. It's going to be so exciting. And they're just hearing the tones and the inflections, not what's said. And that's playful. When it comes to the communicating through sign with children, I think there are a lot of pro-social benefits to that as well. But I'm also aware that so much of that is, how we're touching and experiencing our skin. So a lot of that as well is coming down to what you can do around touch and proprioceptive touch in particular, that sends a message from the skin to the brain that somebody is with you and you're safe. I think anything that encourages clear communication and conveys that sense of, I get you and I get gotten by you, I am understood by you, anything that supports that is really good to strengthen and enhance the parent-child relationship. So yeah, I think go for it.
Fantastic. One of the things in the book that I absolutely loved, and it kind of reminded me how to be a good listener, was the effective listening quiz. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think, effective listening with our children is one of the things. And again, it's all about prepping you for this next stage of adolescence. In my work with children, no matter how old they are, one of the most common things that they complain about their parents is that they're not listening to me. And what they mean is, I don't feel heard. So even when you're there and you're nodding and you think you're listening, if your brain is already going to, I know how they can fix this, or I know what I'm going to say back to this, you're not actually doing effective listening. You're not doing attuned listening. The whole process of effective listening is about allowing yourself to stand in what I'd call that inquisitive stance, that position of not knowing and seeking to understand. So when your child tells you something, you don't jump into solution mode. You pause and you say, okay, so what I've heard you say is, and you get to repeat back what you've heard. That gives them a chance to go, no, that's not what I meant, and correct you. And it buys you time to think, what's this bringing up for me? What might this be bringing up for them? And after you've clarified and they've said, yeah, that's right, that's what I said, that you come in with that very important question, I wonder what you could do about that. Or I wonder what would change that? What would have to happen for things to change? Or I wonder, is there something you want me to do about that? 9 times out of 10, they do not want you to act. They want you to listen. And I think it's very hard. It goes back to a little of what you said earlier on. It's actually very hard for us as parents not to jump in with the answers and the solutions and to leave our kids struggle a bit and to let them work that out. But actually in getting heard, we're empowering them to hear their own words said aloud and repeated back to them. And they get that power to clarify. I think as well that if we want to be, as soon as you hear yourself say, are you listening to me? You know the answer is no, because if they were listening, you wouldn't have to ask. So as soon as you have to say that word, they're not listening. And then you want to get curious. Is it that they're not listening or I'm not being heard? And is there something that I could change about what I'm saying or moreover how I'm saying it that would enable me to get heard? Do I need to come down to their eye level? Do I need to take their little hands in mine and maybe rub circles? Because that regulating touch mixed with eye contact is increasing the engagement level and the connection to enable them to take in what I'm saying. Maybe even swaying the hands side to side as I speak is more rhythmic. And rhythm and synchrony trigger the subsystems of the brain associated with emotional regulation, which drops arousal so that your words can be heard. So there's a whole process about that, but it's about staying in a position of how can I make myself easier to hear instead of you're not listening to me, come meet me at my adult verbal level, and instead saying, I need to change how I'm saying this. Also, we talk a lot about it. You know, I find that if you can't say it in 10 words or less to a child, they've tuned you out. And as soon as you say then, did you hear what I said? Every child on the planet knows that the default answer to that question is yes. But have they? No. Are they going to do that thing again later on? Oh, yeah, definitely. And you're going to be going, but we talked about this. And they're going, I don't know what you're talking about. And I think, you know, as well, it's that I think coming to eye level is vital because, you know, if you're up here and your child's down here and you're talking like this and they're having to look up at you, then what you're getting is they look at you and then past you and they see a cobweb on the ceiling and they're going, you're talking. And now it's like Snoopy and Woodstock, you know, it's like wow, wow, wow sound because they're going, ooh, a cobweb. I wonder, is there a spider in there? Oh, I love Charlotte's Web. We haven't read Charlotte's Web in ages. Oh, I remember that story. They're gone. And then you say, are you listening to me? And they go, yeah. So that's not effective. So it's about actually getting playful and curious with it and saying, how can I make sure that you take it? Often I'll sing an instruction I need to do, making it a song. And you don't have to be a good singer. You know, your kids are just like, aren't you fantastic? So you don't have to be good at that, but making it a song, making it rhythmic, that's also going to be effective. But I think we have to be reflective in how we listen as well and not feel like we have to have all the answers. We really don't. I think it's okay to sit in confusion with our kids and go, wow, I don't know. I don't know what you could do about this, but at least we're working it out together because then we give them permission that they don't have to know the answers. Because if we don't have it, they're allowed not to know. And being in a state of uncertainty together, somebody can hold and bear that confusion with and for you. Then you're going to work out some creative solutions together.
Amazing. Somebody must have heard their name being mentioned, I think. Hello. One of the other questions I was going to ask as well, and it's come from Lydia, who's one of the ladies that works at Bookshore. She was asking about, you can come and say hello. Well, it's creeping past me now because he's doesn't want to get caught on a Facebook Live. Lydia was asking about how do you deal with some of the big questions in life. She's got children who are 5 and 3. And they've been asking her a lot just lately about death and dying. And she was wondering sort of, you know, how you deal with that.
Actually, you know, Lydia, your kids are slap bang developmentally to talk about death and dying. Children really fixate on those themes around kind of 4 to 6 years old would be quite typical, where they talk about it without any real understanding of the permanence of death. You see themes come into their play about things die and then suddenly come back to life. And, you know, so the concept of death is very abstract. It's othered, it's removed, and they don't relate it to themselves, but they do think and talk about it a lot. And it doesn't have to come from that you've had a bereavement in your family and it's very topical. You might be thinking, gosh, that nobody has died. I don't know why they're talking about this. It's a developmental phase and it's something that's really common. So what we want to do with anything, themes, especially the big difficult questions, often what happens is our kids bring it up and we panic because we're not ready. I'm not on script. I didn't see this coming. And you tend to shut it down as a way of managing and go, oh no, that's okay. We won't think about that. We have to be careful about that because in sometimes doing that, we inadvertently communicate, it's not okay to bring that question to me. It's not okay to wonder about that with me. And children don't want to upset their parents. So they will go, ooh, that's a tricky one. Then I should avoid that. If you have done something like that, you just go back and go, I was thinking about that question you asked. And I don't think I understood it at the time. But now that I've had time to think it through, I'd like to talk to you about that. And you can go back and do a repair and address the issue. I think we have to talk about death and dying quite openly. We have to avoid abstract language, ambivalent language. I once worked with a little girl who was very distressed about her granddad had died, and she kept looking for him and asking for him and demanding that everybody would go find him. And so her parents came to me, and immediately that I met her, she said to me, are you going to find my granddad? And I said, how would I do that? And she said, well, she had been told, we've lost granddad. You know that phrase, we've lost. And as a young child, very literal and concrete, was like, we've lost him. We should be out looking for him then. He'll be so scared. He'll be all alone. Then began to worry about, no one's looking for him. If I got lost, would nobody look for me either? And I'm thinking, okay, we have to go back to the basics here. Bring in parents and say, granddad has died. And it was the strangest thing, because that child just actually went, oh, that's so sad. Oh, I thought he was lost, but he died. And that allowed her to grieve. But we have to it's very difficult for us to say those things. The language is what matters. And we tend to sidestep. We think we're doing that to protect our kids, but often we're avoiding what's actually very painful and difficult to speak about for ourselves. So I would tend to do it with things like flowers. If somebody has sent you a bouquet of flowers and those flowers wither and die in a vase, like they would in my house anyway, then you're going to say, oh, the flowers are dead. We better put them out in the compost. And that's it. The flowers are not coming back to life. And I'm saying the flowers are dead. It might be that we walk on our walks out, we might see, a little insect or something like that has died, or we might see things, and we use that language as we go. If you've got pets, don't keep replacing the goldfish. Let the goldfish die. Let everybody know the goldfish has died. Because I mean, some families have goldfish for like 30 years, and you're going, do they though? Do they? This is now, Nemo point 16. But I think that we have to be able to let our kids experience that plants, pets, things die. And when things die, they don't come back to life. And I think then if your kids say, what does death mean? Keep it simple. Say, dead means that your heart doesn't beat anymore and you don't breathe anymore. There you go. That's enough. As a child, I'm going to go, oh, okay. Because sometimes our kids ask us a question and we go, here it comes, brace yourself, I'm just off the death conversation, and we flood them with detail. And they're going, what did I even ask you? I've now lost all concept of the question. And they go, whoa, that's too much. Whereas if we answer the actual question that's asked, let that sit, they'll percolate on it for a while. And if they have more, they come back to you and say, and they give you the next bit. And then you answer that bit. So be really clear that you are answering in an open, honest way with clear, accessible language, the question that has been asked, and no more. Kids know what they need to know.
You're brilliant, Joanna. Honestly, it's fascinating to listen to you. Catherine has just commented and said she's absolutely loving it. And thank you.
Oh, thanks, Catherine.
Lydia's one of Lydia's other questions that she asked is, how do you tackle things like the birds and the bees, so the sort of the facts of life with younger children, like death? Do you bring it in at a very early age and kind of introduce it, or do you ignore it till they're 15 and then get them to
25? Yeah. Let them tell you. Yeah. No, I actually do think you start it really young, and I don't want to scare you, Lydia, but I would start that conversation as young as 2 years old, and I would be growing that up as they do. And I'm not saying you sit down your 2-year-old and you go, brace yourself, kid, here it comes. But actually you start by using appropriate language for all the body parts, that we don't dress that up in baby talk, that we call the body parts what they're supposed to be called, that we talk very openly about our bodies, that, young children are innately curious about their bodies. And when they are exploring their bodies, and any parent out there knows exactly what I'm saying with this, that we don't shut that down or shame it or say, don't be touching yourself, but that we actually respect that and say, well, if you're going to be touching your body, you need to be careful not to hurt hurt yourself, so don't be rough. You need to wash your hands before and afterwards because we have to make sure that we're clean. And we do that in private. That's something you do in your bedroom or maybe the bathroom, but not all around the house. So you use boundaries, but you don't do shaming. And when they're asking you questions, especially at a young age, about where do babies come from, don't immediately assume that means that they want the detail of the facts of life. That's a curiosity going, where did that baby just come from? Because they didn't used to have a baby and now there's a baby. That can be a very kind of generalized comment. I would always be curious about, where do you think the baby came from? And you would be amazed and shocked at the kind of answers you'll get from even the youngest child, and you're going, wow, that is not where babies come from. So you want to say, no, the baby grew inside a mummy's tummy and then this is where the baby came from. Or if it's an adoption or a foster placement, that you tell that story. That baby used to have a different family and that family weren't able to take care of that baby and wanted that baby to have a new mummy and daddy or a new family who could love and take care of them. So now that baby lives here. That's a story that a child will go, okay. They might not understand all the detail, and later on they might want more, but you've answered the question in an honest way. I'm not a fan of lying to children about anything. I generally believe when they ask you a question, they're ready for an answer to that question. And I think that we do them a disservice if we think they're not ready. Children can handle difficult themes and complex themes from really 3 years old onwards. So if you've started your conversation really young, then actually you demystify it. And it isn't that cringy conversation when you're trying to sit down with your 10-year-old and say, so there's some stuff I have to tell you. And you're both going, oh, this is horrific. Because actually you've been using the language and you've been chatting about it openly from the youngest age. So it's a natural progression of it. So yeah, start it young and grow it up as they grow up.
Oh, I wish I knew you 10 years ago.
It's never too late, Kim.
Talk to me about bullying.
Oh, yeah, bullying. So I think bullying is really serious. Just to say from the outset, I think bullying is a very serious social issue. And if there is bullying, you should act appropriately, quickly, and directly to address it head on, because the impact bullying can have on a child's mental health, mental well-being is significant and serious. That being said, I do think and find time and again that we are all overusing the term bullying with children and misusing the term bullying, and we are not doing our children any favors by doing that. We have to be very clear in our own heads so that we can be clear with our children that there is a difference between bullying, rudeness, and meanness. They're not the same things. Sometimes overtly, they can look like, well, that wasn't very kind and that wasn't very nice. Bullying is targeted, conscious, repeated behavior by one person against another, or one person inciting a group to exclude or work against another. It's very serious. Kids can be rude and they can be mean, and that is really unpleasant, but it's not bullying. And if we jump in and we mislabel things like that, we're actually diluting something that is much more serious. We are diluting what we should be doing when we see bullying. And bullying happens with kids. Bullying happens anywhere you have a group, be that adults or children. It does happen and exist. But I don't like to see it thrown around casually. Oh, that child wouldn't play with my child today, they're bullying him. No, they were rude to your child, and that was really unpleasant for your child, but we have to help your child to be able to withstand unpleasant, rude, mean behavior and be able to work through it and gently yet firmly challenge that with someone and say, that's not very kind. I feel really left out when you do that, but I'm going to go play with somebody else because I have enough resilience to do that. So I can say that I don't like it, but it's not going to be something that I think I have always got to bring to an adult. If it's something that crosses a line and it's something I cannot fix myself, of course, bringing in an adult, but we have to empower our children to deal with it. But I actually think, Kim, it starts with us as adults, as parents, understanding the difference between those things, because it's very painful to see your child excluded. It's very painful to see your child left out. Or, you know, you see it in a playground. They go over and they reach out and they try to connect with or join a game that other kids are playing. And if a kid goes, no, you can't play with us, that's really painful. You just want to jump in and go, hey, you let my kid play. But actually, that's not bullying. you know, and maybe if you do that, you might need to question your own behavior towards that child. Yeah. But I do think we've got to think about it.
So have you been following me around?
But I do think we've got to look at that quite seriously. But where it is bullying, act quickly, act directly, and act on behalf of your child. That's not something they can fix themselves. But where it's rudeness and meanness, you have an opportunity to grow and develop your child's strength of character by empowering them to respond to it. Oh my goodness, Kim, I think you're back. I think you froze it out on me, have you? Am I back?
Frozen a little bit.
Can you see me? Hello? No, am I not back?
You've frozen, Joanna.
Kim, can you hear me now?
I'm so sorry, everybody. We seem to have a few technical issues here. Oh, you're back.
I'm so sorry, yeah, because I'm chatting away and I can see myself, you know, moving and dancing, and now you're frozen on me. Oh gosh, technology. Oh, Catherine can see us both. It's just something on our end. Then I'll just keep talking then, will I? Because I know that we've only a few minutes left anyway. So at least if this had to happen, it hasn't happened until towards the end of our session. And I think Kim has just switched out. So what I can do is maybe just look through some of the questions. Oh, people can see. Yeah, other people could see and hear us.
I'm back.
Hopefully we're back. I was saying at least if it had to happen, it only happened in the last few minutes.
Absolutely. I still have hundreds of questions. You are on speed dial on my phone. Never coming off my phone. And it's lovely that Hannah from our head office has just said here, I don't even have children, but I found it absolutely fascinating, and to say thank you.
Oh, Hannah, that's so great. And, you know, I do think there's something for all of us, because we've all been children. Even if you don't have a child, there can be something quite healing in a reflective way to kind of look back and go, oh, I'm making sense of things now from my adult perspective of my own child experience. I think there's something really therapeutic in doing that, even if you don't have children.
Definitely. And I know reading the book has kind of reminded me to play. I think sometimes when your children get a bit older, you kind of forget to play. And you know, Joanna, you know, I've been sending you pictures and tweeting you pictures.
Oh, I love it.
Oliver and I building dens, so much so that I've got quite creative and brought in the parasol umbrella last week.
I know, it was like next level den building. I was so impressed. I was like, that's really fancy. Like, that's fancy now. Yeah.
I don't know what I'm going to come up with this weekend, but I've got to come up with a better plan.
No, but I think you're right. I think it's at that middle childhood stage. And it's why I actually felt really strongly about writing a book that is about those middle childhood years, because we tend to focus, you know, I think generally speaking in the field of psychology on those important early years. And then we tend to catapult forward to the challenging adolescent years, and we short circuit middle childhood. And that's a huge mistake, because actually the stuff that comes up in middle childhood is exactly how that's what tells us how have our children managed to come out of early childhood and how are they preparing for the next stage. But huge development happens. But it's also an age when we're most likely to stop playing with our kids. You know, we tend to go, oh, that imaginative stage, that's done now. And they tend to prefer bikes and scooters and skateboards and digital devices at this stage. And we forget that actually play is a state of mind. It's a way of being. You can be playful in how you speak with your child. It's not a box of toys. It's not even a set of activities. But actually, I think there are tons of ways that you can, you know, develop meaningful, mindful play within what interests them at this stage. There's tons. And that's what the book was for. It was to give you that roadmap of here's all the things that you can do.
Well, I'm sure everybody will agree here that this has been absolutely fascinating. And I think Catherine's just said we could listen to you all day.
Oh, thank you so much. It flew by. I can't believe that was an hour.
I know, it's amazing. Well, perhaps we can do another one another day.
Sure.
That'd be fantastic. This will be saved as a video on the page, so if anybody wants to share it with any friends, that would be amazing. I will just go over the books again. So we've got 15-minute parenting, 0 to 7 years, which is available now. that's there. We have 15-minute parenting 8 to 12 years, which is there. And then later this year, we're going to be bringing out the next stage, aren't we, Joanna? Do you want to just...
The teen, so that's, going to be 15-minute parenting, the teen years. And, it's one of the places that I find adults are quite afraid of the idea of playing with their teenagers. Go, oh, I couldn't do that. I could do that with my little kid, but I couldn't do that with a teenager. Teenagers wouldn't do that. And I have to challenge that and say, I do this for a living with teenagers. Teenagers play and they light up when they are met at that playful, engaged stage. But actually, it's mostly to do with our discomfort of imagining how we could do this with kids of that age. So I'm thinking a lot about communication and connection. Connection seems to be my buzzword with teenagers, because that's what we want to do in those teenage years, is find creative, playful ways to stay connected when developmentally they drive a disconnection. That's the route they're following. So we have to get quite creative in how we stay connected. So that book is coming later on in the year, October-ish time. And I'm excited actually to bring that one out as well.
I'm excited because that's the one that I probably need the most. Although perhaps I need to go back to the beginning.
I know. Well, look, you can always... The early stuff comes back into play later on. Adolescence is the second bite at a developmental apple. You find the terrible 2s quickly become the terrible 12s and 13s. But now they've got door slamming and language, to throw at you. But it's the same rule of thumb. It's still about boundaries and limit setting. It's just how we deliver it. So actually that makes sense to go back, to go forward.
Well, I'm really hoping that at the point when the internet dropped out, nobody heard me go into the hall and go, Oliver, get off right now.
Oh, no, nobody heard that at all. No way.
Well, thank you again, Joanna. As I say, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I would absolutely love to do this another day.
Likewise. Yeah, it's been lovely.
It has. It's been fantastic. So thank you so very much.
Thank you.
And thank you. Thank you very much. Take care.